Hello everyone, this is the RPG Monger, and I know, I've heard your cries. The last time I made a video like this was in October. You want more fandom stories, and with my DMs absolutely flooded with ones ripe for the picking, I think it's about time I put them to good use. Without wasting a second of your time with useless banter, today we're gonna be going over some of the worst fandom horror stories out there, and they're all from you guys. To get right into it, let's return to the land of Osomatsu-san with a tale I like to call The Dog Lover. Warning, this will contain mentions of bestiality, so if you just don't need that in your life, just skip to the next one. So to start off with our protagonist actually being a former fan of Bielmatsu, I must stress that, come on, not all fujoshi are like the one I'm about to talk about. To be frank, this person makes up less than 1% of the entire fujoshi base in general, and I guess I should also say that, come on, these people don't make up an entire fandom. The majority of just about all fandoms are actually really nice. You'd think that after me saying that so much, people would actually get it. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Our protagonist was on Instagram when they came across an account called... Once seeing their account, they asked for a cute Ichiji picture, and of course with that, they sent one. Well, over time, they started talking over their shared distaste with another ship within the fandom, and became friends. But it was when Totokatas started making a ruckus, let's just say, that things began to turn sour. So in a chat with our protagonist, and another friend, our protagonist was talking about how much they disliked Totokatas due to such factors like the fact that they liked dogs a bit more than the average person should. Well, in turn, ended up saying that they too not only liked dog porn, but sent a ton of it to their chat. Of course, because of this, our protagonist immediately blocked them, though right before they did, this disgusting trash being said, and I quote, "Okay, you white piece of trash, your art sucks anyways, just go kill yourself." All due to the fact that our protagonist didn't like dog porn. Ugh, god, how do people like this even come to exist? I know that story was a bit on the short side, but I had to mention it. Now, let's get into the real stuff. While this story does start off in the Hetalia fandom, it truly does go much beyond it. Let's call this one The Betrayal. When Hetalia was at its height, our protagonist this time around met a girl on a fanfiction site. Fortunately, they both hit it off really well and ended up doing all sorts of things together, like cosplaying, for example. Soon after getting to know her, the friend also ended up getting a boyfriend through the community. Even if it was a bit bizarre since they got together in a cosplay event solely because they both liked the same ship, our protagonist was fine and happy for them. Well, then they began to act a bit peculiar. At the time, there was a girl who used to cosplay East Germany and Prussia in the fandom. The thing is, she would get really into character. So much in fact that she'd not only express Nazi ideology, but just straight up do Nazi salutes. Of course, due to this, many people condemned her since, I mean, getting into character is fine and all, but there's an obvious line with these things that you just don't cross. Well, guess what? The couple actually defended that girl's actions. Though due to our protagonist being their good friend, she ignored it. For now. By now, Hetalia was long gone, and FNAF had taken center stage in the wild world of fandoms. With this, of course, where the couple was obsessed with Hetalia before, now they were obsessed with FNAF. And with our protagonist not exactly meeting their level of obsession, they began to slightly distance themselves from her. With the same situation repeating by the time Undertale came around, at this point, the couple was solely obsessed with Undertale and League of Legends, and had continued being distant and cold with our protagonist. Normally in these kinds of situations, you'd ask why they were doing this, or what you had even done wrong, right? Well, unfortunately, that's not what our protagonist did in this situation. To no avail, she tried to change herself to better fit their wants by actually attempting to play League of Legends, though even with that, they continued to completely ignore her because she was, and I quote, too noob for them. At some point, our protagonist had also broke up with her girlfriend at the the time, thus making the divide even larger since they began preferring to hang out with her more than their actual friend that had stuck by them. Though wait, it gets worse. One day, the boyfriend ended up inviting her to his birthday party, which was great. Finally, our protagonist would be able to see her friend. Well, after such events like the couple having drunk sex at the party and the girlfriend vomiting all over herself, being the good friend our protagonist was, she helped her clean the vomit out of her hair. And at this point, she could not take it anymore. Why had her friend, after all this time, just began ignoring her for no reason whatsoever? Well, her response, and I quote, was, "We aren't even really close friends anymore. I mean, we aren't even in the same fandom." And then it hit her. After all this time, this scumbag wasn't even friends because she liked her as a person. The sole reason they had even become friends in the first place was due to her favorite ship being the one that they cosplayed. When our protagonist moved on from the Hetalia fandom, this piece of trash moved on from her. I think it goes without saying that letting a fandom actually encompass your entire life is an awful thing to do, and if you treat the people who care about you like this solely because of a fandom, shame on you. Well, it's not over yet, folks. Now, let's return to the fandom that I actually started the Fandom Files with, Attack on Titan. We'll call this tale The Persecution. Like many, our protagonist this time around was quite active on Tumblr and actually made a cozy group of friends through the fandom. Though considering that I'm telling this story, unfortunately, this did not last forever. As with the ship wars ravaging the fandom at the time, their little friend group was not spared. Soon, due to an argument between two of the friends, they all had to pick a side on whether they liked a certain ship or not. While considering our protagonist didn't personally care for the ship, one of the friends that did took it upon themselves to go into a full-on rant telling them why they have to like that ship. Of course, considering them not liking it was their opinion, they openly expressed that they just were not gonna change. Well, unfortunately, this person just would not let up. They began sending borderline and straight up porn of the ship, begging this poor person to give the ship a chance. Of course, with this, our protagonist did the sensible thing and told them outright that they just didn't want to talk anymore, considering the obsessive was spamming them with porn at this point. And instead of letting it go and moving on with their life, this awful excuse for a human being actually ended up going as far as to Photoshop the conversations between our protagonist and them to make it look like our protagonist was the one harassing. Then, not only was the entire friend group condemning our poor protagonist, but they actually began receiving random death threats for being a homophobe. Though they didn't stop there. Once they somehow got a hold of our protagonist's Facebook, then things turned dark. This deranged person began to go as far as to spam not only death threats, but all sorts of porn throughout this guy's timeline. And since this was Facebook, these petty actions even began affecting our protagonist's personal life, with their loved ones questioning why such explicit things were showing up on his Facebook. The ironic thing was, even though they were going through a literal witch hunt on the basis that they were a homophobe, our protagonist was actually LGBT themselves. Being petty is one thing, but actually damaging someone's personal life over a disagreement on the internet is something that truly shows what a garbage person you are. To end this harrowing journey off, however, I have a story that's less one that'll make you lose faith in humanity, but one that'll actually show how great of an impact a fandom can have on someone's life, and not in a negative way. The protagonist of this story had a wife that absolutely loved the Mother series. While our protagonist was never the biggest fan, she adored them. Despite this, they were not only partners in life, but best friends as well. In 2015, she passed away due to a heart attack. A few months later, he began seeing a lot online about this game called Undertale, with many of his friends highly recommending it. However, he just brushed it off as another forgettable indie game, though one day, he stumbled upon one of the game's songs in a video and had to know more. Soon enough, he got himself a copy of Undertale Undertale and began to play. Throughout playing the game, he kept thinking how much his late wife would have loved to play it, since these were the exact kinds of games she would always play. Well, a few tears and hours later, he'd gotten the true pacifist ending and beaten the entire game. Though it was when the credits sequence was playing that he noticed something. When the game was going through the backer credits, a certain name flew by that seemed familiar. It was actually his wife's old tag online. Well, even though she had stopped using it at one point, he had to give himself peace of mind. So as he dug through her old email, he actually found it. Before she died, his wife was actually a backer for the game. All the time he spent thinking about how much she would have loved Undertale ended up making so much sense, considering she had already loved it 2 or 3 years before he even knew it existed. At this point, he completely broke down. While it may just be another indie RPG to some people, to this man, Undertale is his late wife's last gift for him to treasure. And my friends, if things like that can happen, then that really shows how much good fandoms can bring. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, do subscribe, and today's cool thing of the day is Cave Story. Now, I know I could not be more late to the party, but with it pretty much curing my boredom while I was in Brazil with barely any internet, I had to make it the cool thing of the day at some point or another. If you haven't played it yet, Cave Story truly is a treasure of an experience, and a perfect game to get on the Switch. So that being said, I'm the RPG Monger, and don't forget that each and every one of you are fantastic. And don't worry, Fandom Files Season 2 is coming soon.